I want to show you something that changed the way I think about Windows. Not a headline, not a leak, but something I found running quietly on my own machine that I never turned on and never agreed to. I was doing a routine audit of outbound network connections on my main Windows 11 PC. Nothing dramatic, just checking what was phoning home and how often. And what I found wasn't a virus, wasn't a compromised app, wasn't anything a scanner would flag. It was Windows itself making regular scheduled connections to Microsoft's data collection infrastructure. Connections that persisted even after I had gone through every privacy setting. In the settings menu and turned off everything I could find. That moment is why I started using the 3 tools. I'm going to show you today, and once you see what I saw, you'll understand why I didn't stop at the built-in options. Before I show you the tools, you need to understand exactly what's being collected, because telemetry is one of those words that sounds bureaucratic and boring right up until you see what it actually includes. Microsoft uses the word telemetry as a catch-all. For the data, Windows sends back to their servers on a continuous basis. But the actual scope of that collection is documented, not by privacy advocates or researchers with an agenda, but by Microsoft's own support and documentation pages. And it is significantly broader than most people realize. At the minimum diagnostic data level, which is the lowest setting available on Windows 11 Home, Microsoft collects your device identifiers, your hardware configuration, details about which software is installed and running, crash and error reports, and performance metrics. That's the floor. On the default full diagnostic setting, which is what most machines ship with and what most people never change. That expands to include app usage data, browsing activity through Microsoft's own browsers and services, typing and handwriting samples when certain features are active, voice input data when Cortana or voice access is enabled, and location data tied to your device ID. The documentation for this lives in Microsoft's privacy statement and the Windows diagnostic data. Documentation pages, both publicly accessible, and I'd encourage you to read them because seeing it written in Microsoft's own language is clarifying in a way that secondhand descriptions aren't. Now here is where it gets specific, and this is the part worth paying close attention to. Independent researchers at the Privacy and Access Council of Canada published analysis in 2023 documenting that Windows 11, even after users applied all available in-OS privacy settings, continued transmitting data to a set of Microsoft endpoints that do not respond to those settings. That the operating system contacts on a schedule regardless of your configured preferences. Security researcher and network analyst, super user contributor known as Anti-Spy, documented this in detail with Wireshark capture logs that have been widely cited in the privacy community, showing consistent outbound traffic to Microsoft collection endpoints, even on what users believed were locked down configurations. This isn't theoretical. It is observable on your own machine with free tools if you know where to look. What does this mean in real terms? Think about what runs on your PC over the course of a day. The documents you're drafting, the searches you're running, the applications you're opening, and for how long, the errors that occur, and what you were doing when they happened. App usage telemetry builds a behavioral profile. What you use, how you use it, in what sequence, for how long. That profile has direct commercial value. It informs product decisions, yes, but it also feeds into the targeting infrastructure that Microsoft's advertising business runs on. According to Microsoft's own advertising platform documentation, Microsoft Advertising uses signals from across the Microsoft ecosystem, which explicitly includes Windows, to enable audience targeting. You're using a productivity tool. It's also a data pipeline. Think about that for a second, because those two things existing simultaneously is not an accident. And then there's the settings reset problem. If you've ever carefully gone through Windows privacy settings, turned everything off, and then noticed, after a major update, that some of those toggles had silently reverted to their default, collection enabled, state, you are not imagining things. This has been documented repeatedly by the Windows community, including detailed before and after comparisons published on GitHub and the privacy-focused subreddit communities, showing specific settings that Windows feature updates reset without notification. Microsoft has never formally acknowledged this pattern as a bug, which means it isn't being treated as one. Here's the business reality that puts all of this in context. And once you see it, the we collect data to improve your experience, and the line lands very differently. Microsoft's advertising revenue, while smaller than Google's or Meta's, is a multi-billion-dollar business. Their fiscal year 2024 reports showed the search and news advertising segment, which is powered in part by cross-platform behavioral data, generating over $12 billion annually. That number doesn't grow without data. And the richest, most reliable source of behavioral data Microsoft has access to is the operating system running on over 1 billion devices worldwide. Windows isn't just software. For Microsoft's data business, it is infrastructure. This is why the settings approach alone was never going to be sufficient. The The settings menu is a consumer-facing interface. The data pipeline underneath it is an enterprise-facing revenue asset. Those are two different things designed for two different audiences. When there's a conflict between them, when a setting you turned off interferes with a data collection endpoint that feeds a $12 billion business line, the outcome is predictable. Your preference loses. It's like being handed a volume knob for a conversation happening in another room. You can turn it, but the conversation doesn't stop. When I understood that clearly, I stopped looking for the right combination of built-in settings and started looking for tools that operate at a different layer entirely. Tools that don't ask Windows to police itself, but instead work around or above the OS to enforce the restrictions you actually want. I tested a lot of options. These three are the ones I kept. All right, 3 tools, each one targeting a different layer of the problem, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how I use each one so you're not guessing. The first tool is O&O Shutup 10++, and it is the one I recommend starting with, because it gives you the clearest picture of how many data collection settings exist that Windows never shows you in one place. Shutup 10 and ++ is made by O&O Software, a German company that has been in the Windows optimization space since 1997. It's free, no installation required. It runs as a standalone executable, and it presents every significant Windows privacy and telemetry setting in a single interface organized by category. When you open it on a fresh or default Windows 11 machine, the number of settings that are active, collection enabled, sharing enabled, advertising enabled, is genuinely surprising. Most people who see it for the first time say some version of the same thing, and they had no idea. Here's how I use it. Don't grab it from a third-party mirror, get it from the source. Run it without installing. Go to Actions in the menu, then Apply Recommended Settings. That baseline applies the settings that Shutup 10++ flags as privacy improving without disabling functionality that most users need. Then go through the categories manually, particularly the telemetry and Microsoft Office sections, and review anything marked yellow, which indicates a more aggressive setting that trades some functionality for more privacy. Apply what matches your use case. One critical step. After you've configured it, go to Actions again and create a restore point first if you haven't already. And whenever Windows pushes a feature update, run Shutup 10++ again afterward, because as I mentioned earlier, updates reset settings. This tool takes about 15 minutes the first time and 5 minutes after every major update. It costs nothing. The second tool is SimpleWall, and this one operates at a completely different layer. Where Shutup 10++ works with Windows settings, SimpleWall is a network filtering tool, specifically a Windows filtering platform application that lets you control which processes on your machine are allowed to make outbound internet connections. This is the tool that addresses those hard-coded telemetry endpoints that don't respond to settings at all. If a process can't reach a server, it doesn't matter whether the setting is on or off. SimpleWall is open source, maintained on GitHub by developer Henry++. You can read every line of code, and it's free. When you first run it, it operates in learning mode, prompting you to allow or block each application that attempts a connection. This phase takes a day or two of normal use to get through, because you're building a rule set for your own workflow. Allow your browser, your email client, your productivity apps. When you see a process called diagtrack, that's the Windows Connected User Experiences and Telemetry Service, block it. COM, or similar Microsoft telemetry domains, block them at the process level. SimpleWall maintains those rules persistently and will notify you when a new process attempts a connection you haven't evaluated yet. One important caveat on SimpleWall: Windows Update requires certain Microsoft connections to function. SimpleWall includes a dedicated Windows Update mode under the Tools menu that temporarily allows those connections, lets updates run, then returns to your custom rule set. Use that mode deliberately rather than permanently allowing Windows Update processes, because Microsoft bundles telemetry collection into the same service infrastructure as update delivery, and a blanket allow on update processes undoes some of what you're trying to accomplish. This tool has a learning curve of a few days. After that, it runs silently and requires almost no maintenance. The third tool is Portmaster, and it's the one that ties the approach together at the most visible level. Portmaster is a free, open-source network monitor and firewall made by Safing, an Austrian privacy company. Unlike SimpleWall, which is primarily rule-based, Portmaster gives you a live dashboard of every network connection your machine is making, organized by application, with the ability to block categories of connections globally, including a pre-built filter list specifically targeting Microsoft telemetry endpoints. It also integrates with the SPN, Safing Privacy Network, which is a paid feature, but the free version's telemetry blocking and connection monitoring is genuinely excellent and sufficient for most users. I/O, run through the setup and go to the Global Settings section. Enable the Block Microsoft Telemetry filter list. Then open the monitor view and spend 10 minutes watching what your machine is doing in real time. This is the closest thing to the Wireshark experience I described earlier, but with a consumer-friendly interface that doesn't require networking expertise. What you see in that monitor will answer any remaining questions you had about whether any of this matters. Used together, these three tools create overlapping layers of protection. Shutup 10++ handles the settings layer, turning off what Windows allows you to turn off through its own interface. Simple Wall handles the network enforcement layer, blocking processes from making connections that settings don't control. Portmaster handles the visibility and category filtering layer, giving you ongoing awareness of what's happening and catching anything the other two miss. Combined setup time is under an hour. Combined cost is $0. A note on who this might not apply to. If you're on a work-managed machine, your IT department controls network policy, and installing network filtering tools may conflict with your organization's security configuration or violate your acceptable use policy. Check before installing anything on a corporate device. If you use Windows Hello for Business, some enterprise authentication flows require Microsoft connectivity that aggressive blocking may interfere with. Test in a non-production environment first. And to be direct about one thing, none of these tools are a reason to disable Windows Defender, your firewall, or Smart Screen. The data collection conversation and the threat protection conversation are separate. Defender and Smart Screen protect you from external threats. These tools address what the OS itself is sending outward. Keep both conversations distinct and keep your security stack intact. The reason you clicked on this video is the same reason I went looking for these tools in the first place. Something felt off, and it turns out that instinct was correct. There is a version of this story where Microsoft's data collection is entirely benign, aggregated, anonymized, genuinely used only to improve products, posing no meaningful risk to any individual user. That version might even be mostly accurate most of the time. But here's the problem with relying on that version. You have no way to verify it. The data leaves your machine on Microsoft's schedule, goes to Microsoft's servers, and is handled according to Microsoft's policies, which they can update. You are not in the loop, you are the subject of the process, not a participant in it. What these three tools give you is not perfect privacy. Nothing running Windows gives you perfect privacy, but they give you something more important than that. They give you a meaningful measure of control over a system that was not designed to give you control. They shift the default. Instead of your machine sending data unless you successfully navigate every privacy setting in the right combination and hope the next update doesn't reset it, your machine blocks collection unless you explicitly permit a connection. That inversion, from opt-out to opt-in at the network level, is what makes this approach different from anything Microsoft's own interface offers. You are the owner of your machine, not a telemetry source, not a behavioral data point, not a node in a $12 billion advertising infrastructure. An owner. And owners get to decide what leaves their property. The audit I described at the beginning of this video, watching my own machine's outbound connections, took about 20 minutes and cost nothing. If you do one thing after watching this, let it be that. Download Portmaster, open the monitor view, and watch your machine for 10 minutes. What you see will tell you everything you need to know about whether these tools belong on your system. If this gave you something actionable, subscribe, because this kind of thing changes fast. Microsoft's telemetry endpoints, the tools that address them, the settings that get reset with updates, it's a moving target, and I cover it as it moves, not weeks after. And drop a comment telling me which of these three tools you're starting with. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me know what to go deeper on next.